It's like
through the nose for a table, you know, it's like
Okay,
to present to something.
they're called alleys?
Yeah, they're called alleys, yeah, artist
Okay.
alleys. And then now they have a graffiti alley there, they have a bunch of different type of alleys.
So they're kind of like conventions.
Yeah, so they're in the conventions, that's how they survive. But then
Okay.
it's changing still because now you have more people at these conventions.
Yeah.
Before, in the 70s, 80s, people went to the conventions to buy actually books and literature and read. Now they're just coming to see what new movies coming out and get free junk that they're gonna probably just sit all over their house and, you know. It's you know, like people over here, like we had all these people coming in here earlier, and we're like, hey man, come check this out. Like, no. It's like, they're like zombies. They're like zombies. They just want the corporate, you know, this is a corporate thing.
All I know is Spider-Man and DC.
Right, that's it. But the thing is, on the other side is that this is a good opportunity to sell your shit. Like, I mean, I did the Javits for 10 years and I stopped doing it because I was just like, it's a loss, you know, and you know, and you have a fucking tax attorney telling you, hey man, this is you're gonna go bankrupt, you have to stop. Then you have to think of other ways of doing it, you know.
that's because the tables are so expensive.
Right,
Yeah.
they're just killing you.
Yeah.
Like in San Diego, they haven't raised their prices in almost 10 years. It's the same price, but these guys are. When I first started here, with $600 was for a table for like an artist alley or whatever, and now it's like $700, $800. 10 by 10 space was like $1,200. Now it's $3,000. It's like,
But there's
And
like so many small independent comic conventions that are all over the country now.
Oh,
Like,
all over. They
there's
don't
more
need
and
this
more of them.
place.
They're like
Oh,
in
yeah.
Denver, in Columbus, in
Yeah,
Boston.
everywhere.
I mean,
Well,
It's floating.
our best one, Ray, is the Black Convention in January at the Schomburg.
yeah, I made more money at the Schomburg, a one-day show, than I ever made 4 days at the Jets.
Yeah.
And that's just the
Yeah,
reality.
and the people are nice.
So it's not about mass.
But then it's again about community. I feel like
Right.
the interesting thing is that, and it goes back to what Clayton said earlier about community and also summer. The convention in January is like it's a community show. It's
Right.
like for African American artists.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a lot about community building, and maybe to go back to our graphic novel, what is
Yeah.
also amazing.
Literacy.
Clayton's place is really one of the last community spaces in the Lower East Side. I mean, the 161 Essex Street, every time I come to Clayton, always someone knocks on the window that, hey! So the door is always open. So in a way, it's like one of the old school places where people come in, and it's part of, I mean, Eddie wrote it beautifully in the preface, so Clayton wants your story. So he is a listener, he's collecting stories, and creates like a kind of remembrance culture of like a vanishing New York. I want to give one shout out because Jaime Permut is here, who did an amazing photo project, Young Caros, where he, Willis Point, had like this junkyards where you had like all this Hispanic car mechanics there for decades. And it was like one of those things that Bloomberg basically decided to change and basically kicked them all out. He did an amazing photo project that, you should check it out. Jaime, please just raise your hand. It's an amazing, guys afterwards, but yeah, Jaime is an amazing photographer, and he really took the time, and he's from Guatemala, spoke with people, and that's the thing. It's like it's still an art form to take the time and listen to people, and I think like in this time when everybody's on their cell phones and so on, it's harder to do, but really amazing things can happen when people.
And
do
some
it.
things catch on, like I know World War III is still out there functioning, and they started in '79, and they're still really pushing, and I see now they got a hardcover with a large anthology. That David Wojnarowicz
Great artist.
illustrated novel, that thing does really, really well.
Yeah.
So that's really out there.
7 miles a second or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. So that's been out now for
Great.
years, and that's
Yeah.
still making the circuits and things. So some of these things really do have long lives and longevity.
Yeah, they do. So why did you decide to focus on like drag queens and gangsters and underground tattoo artists? What was that caught your eye? Like, what was that
Well, I think
spark?
it's things that are outside the system I always find more interesting. I mean, it's kind of like I have pictures of a lot of people that nobody else has pictures of, and everybody else wants a picture of Mick Jagger. And the way I think about it is that, if I had a picture of Keith Richards right now taking a piss between two cars, I could probably sell it for $10,000 tomorrow. And there has to be a million pictures of him out there. I mean, literally, nowadays, there's got to be a million. So, I mean, I just prefer the one where there's fewer pictures of rather than the millions of pictures of. And I found the Lower East Side was such a rich, eccentric community, and they had so many characters down there that were way off the grid. And now what happens is you start realizing you document some of these characters that are way off the grid, And now, years later, they're starting to find their place in society, and they're starting to become recognized. And some of those people, they will be really well known and geniuses in a few years. And so it's kind of discovering these people, which I think is really phenomenal and interesting. And there's been a lot of them. And the Lower East Side was filled with that whole sort of richness of the outsiders. I mean, God, it's, there's so many different parts. Like Eat From Here, he's done a lot of the sort of sexual underground, that whole thing. And he's now coming into his own with people who are now finally getting interested. Meatpacking History's disappeared. He's got that archive. You have the archive. And there is something about collecting an archive, whether it's visual or whatever, that years later people do come to. They eventually get it. You know, whether it's World War III and their comics, or David Wojnarowicz and 42nd Street in the 80s. People do eventually, it takes them a longer time to get there, but eventually they get there and they get it. I just hope to still be around when they get it, so.
Did you ever see that museum show they had on that artist, David Wojnarowicz, back in like the 90s in Soho?
Yeah, he's...
that was a great...
Yeah, I know the woman, C. Carr, that did a bio of him, and so that's like really important. And so, and it's like, you know, Julian's book on the Ghetto Brothers. I mean, that's now, it's in 6 different languages, and it's really incredible what he's done with that. And that's become, you know, that's become a very important period, and thank God that book has actually become instrumental. And it's actually taught in schools. It's a history book now. Wow. So illustrated novels really do have that kind of potential in the future, you know. And I think sometimes it just takes a while for the audience to catch up to it. But like I say, his Ghetto Brothers is, I mean, it's really caught on in 6 different languages. I mean, all over the world.
It's the first graphic novel that made me cry. And at the end, I was like tearing, like.
Well, these big crap. Oh, sorry. Everybody over 18? We okay with that?
Let's wrap this up. We'll open up to the audience. What's your next project?
I have a 13-page story in a anthology about cults, American cults,
Cool.
and that's coming out November 2020.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Summer?
I'm working on a zombie comic with a writer from Florida. He's doing a bunch of shorts about zombies in swampland.
Oh, cool. What you working on?
Well, Eddie will tell you I have an endless tattoo book that I'm trying to get finished, so I'm trying to get that. And Marvin over there said, when is that going to be done? So I'm working on trying to get this tattoo book.
It's one of those 10-year projects in terms of
yeah, so
20 years.
come on, Marvin, not that bad.
That's okay.
Well, I'm going to be working with these two, trying to
Yes,
get the gallery back going,
the
and
madness.
Cool.
selling some of the merch online.
Nice.
And I'm just always painting and drawing. I'm that kid.
That's awesome.
Well, I'll be happy when this book is finally in my hands, so I'm excited about this. And then next year I have also, so I did a book on the creators of Superman, and it's part of a trilogy. So the second book that is about the creators of Batman is coming out in France.
Really?
Yep. The Bill Finger story. It's finally coming out. So it's coming out in France, and we're hoping also for an English edition. Next year will be pretty great because there's like 3 books coming out in Europe.
We gotta do a fucking like show for that.
We'll figure this out. But yeah, so I'm
or something.
always working on the next idea. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
I'm always working on shit. For the last decade, I've had about 8 books that I haven't published because I don't have time to color it. You know,
What's it? The Trump land.
And then we have the Trumpland book that's coming out. We got a poster. It's going to be published in French, English, and hopefully German because they're doing the German Comic-Con in 2 weeks to sell the book.
Right.
Cool.
And Barnes and Nobles and Target and Amazon. It's all on pre-order. We have like the little like slip papers and Tom can.
Yeah, I have the flyer, so
Tom
anyone else.
worked on it. That was his genius idea to put this crazy story together, and we did it. And that's
Insane
it.
idea.
Cool. Any questions? Sure, everyone has questions, please. Let's not be the cell phone society. Go ahead.
I'm just, I'm curious if you can think back to some kind of epiphany or moment where you felt, okay, now the neighborhood is done for. Now it's over.
You know, it'd be hard to really pin it like that, where all of a sudden I thought, oh my God, it's really there. I mean, you're right, there was always this period where you believed that it would stop. I mean, the history of Lower East Side is it always had a point where it stopped. Something came along. World War I came along, maybe pogroms in Russia came along, the Depression came along, you know, like let's say 1929, you had Agaloff Towers. All the Jews with money moved back to the Lower East Side because that's back to the culture again. 1929 comes, everything just collapses. Then World War II. Then after World War II, then you got the big Puerto Rican immigration. So now you got another immigration pattern happening. And there was always something that took it back. By the time you get into the 60s, then it became the heroin in the 70s.
Heroin again.
The thing went through the cycle twice, like after 87. It just, usually there's a cycle like that, the stock market crashed and all that. It didn't affect real estate, so real estate went a couple of cycles. And once it went, like by the time we got to the second and third cycle, it's impossible to go back. You know, I mean, Ludlow Street used to be like Lou Reed, $38 a month to live in a loft there at one time. Once you get these multi-million-dollar hotels, like 2 hotels, 2 buildings, it's like $1 billion worth of real estate. It's 2 $500 million projects. So that's, you know, it changed the skyline, it changed the zoning, it changed the economic, changed everything. So Lower East Side isn't capable of going back. Even if the whole thing crashed, they'll never get back to what it was before. And it's just so much stuff has been erased. I don't know if the rest of the world is like that or not. I don't know. I mean, it seems like all across America is changing like this. But yeah, I didn't really have an epiphany where all of a sudden one day I thought, I mean, there was times in the 80s I thought, yeah, this gentrification is not real.